guys are against buying version one, but I love buying these versions because it's like there's a cool factor, right? So you are a futurist, and so it's not only status, but it's also you buy in a situation of scarcity, and you have the vision. So I think being version one buyers make us look cool first, and we are investing time and money into an energy into an idea, so it signals vision, right? And I love that. I love that. If I not only for show, right? So to boast money or the vision itself, but if I believe into the product, I don't have any problem buying the version one. If anything, to help the company and to help the technology to be developed, and yeah, and it's also a nice attention magnet. And if it's a highly inefficient version one, it's like when you buy a supercar, very uncomfortable supercar with two seats, no room in the trunk. Well, that's exactly the reason why that purchase and buying into that car will signal that you are rich, right? And you are, why? Because you spent $500,000 in something it's not only useless because you don't need a supercar, right? Because that's your fifth car. It's clearly your fifth car because there's no room in the trunk and you have three children. Well, it's inconvenient, expensive. You're gonna use it. You're gonna drive it 5,000 miles in 5 years. And people know if you buy a truck, $500,000 truck, nobody is gonna think you're cool because the truck is useful. You use the truck for your job. So that's exactly the reason why we look cool buying into a version one. And if the version one is highly inefficient or useless, you're going to look even cooler. We will think about
Yeah,
it.
and you've just described like there's five stages of marketing adoption. It's the innovators, the people that just buy new technology as soon as it comes out. Then the early adopters, right? The innovators are usually the influencers, the people that just live, eat, and breathe that space, or just have an enthusiasm for it, like you're saying, buy into the company. The early adopters usually see it from one of the innovators, and then it comes the early majority, then the late majority, and then the laggards, right? The people who 30 years have gone by and they're still on the flip phones and saying, I don't want a smartphone, this works for me. So version one, you're also not capturing that it's a piece of history, right? It's a legacy. It's a new market product has been unleashed, like one of one, and you see that thing developing. Think of the amount of information that you'll get from the early interactions from version one. You'll learn how to talk to it, how to associate with it better. When version two comes out, you'll already have a level of understanding of the product, how to engage it in a way that's going to give you optimal results. So not only is it a piece of history, but I think the exposure to this technology, the interactions that you'll have, you'll be learning to use the product while they're making it better, giving you a better understanding of how to get the advantages from it as well.
And you are signaling that you can face and absorb easily the aggressive depreciation. You don't care, right? Okay, this model one is far from perfection, right? Far from perfection, and still needs to be improved. I want to help the company. I want to test it. I want to be a beta tester, right? And I can afford the depreciation. Don't worry. That's my problem, right? I'm going to buy these robots. I'm going to buy these Cybertruck. I'm going to buy these Ferrari EV and the Luce, right? And AJ's laughing because we were talking about the new Ferrari. And because I can afford to buy an highly imperfect first attempt. And it's also signaling my respect to that attempt, signaling that I agree with that boldness, with that courage, and I want to be part of it. Exactly. That's another very interesting topic, right? So honestly, I like the shape, I like the design. I think Love From did a great job. Of course, you guys know better than I do that Love From was founded by the guy who is behind many, many successful designs for Apple, for at least 2 decades, if not more. People seem to hate the design. I think the design is cool, interior even better. But I think, and I want to pick AJ's brain here, I think Ferrari is losing the battle against EV anyway, regardless, inherently, because again, a gas engine like Ferrari, when you buy a Ferrari, you don't compare that car with a Lamborghini. You don't compare the speed. You don't compare the acceleration. You really don't care. You appreciate the craftsmanship. You appreciate that 20 technicians crafted that car in months, the uniqueness and the labor, the expertise, and you pay $500,000 or more just because it's a Ferrari. You don't judge the single parts. When you remove the engine and you replace it with the battery, and it just so happened that the car is even slower than the Tesla, and the acceleration is worse than the Tesla, and the battery doesn't last longer than a Tesla, then Ferrari is screwed because they are trying to charge $700,000 for that car. There's no reason to pay that money. So I don't think we should hate that car for its shape, its design. I think the design is cool, but that's subjective. The problem is that Ferrari anticipated a battle that they could have postponed to 2030, 2002, right? Why now? Why losing a few billions of dollars just to tackle that problem, tackle that battle now in 2026? It was unnecessary, and it was an unnecessary anticipation of a war that they already lost. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there was a big push for EV development like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I remember articles saying that all cars would be EVs by 2025 or 2026 or something, and mandated by the government. But now we have, I think they've rolled back on those regulations. And the problem with the car is that the development cycle for a car is like 5-6 years. So I think maybe they probably just created this car as an early reaction to those laws that were being proposed, and now they're in a place where they made an EV that nobody asked for. As far as like where I think that there's like you said, the element to Ferraris that are interesting is the emotion of it, right? The sound that the engine makes and the craftsmanship that goes into the engine itself. That's sort of lost with it when you're just putting electricity through a coil and moving the car forward and blasting a fake sound through the speakers on the outside. So I think there's probably going to be a new space emerging of clean vehicles that still have that sort of mechanical element. One technology that's interesting is hydrogen combustion cars. So instead of burning gasoline, to actually burn hydrogen in a mechanical fashion, just like how you would burn gasoline. And that way you can still have, moving parts and gears and an interesting sound. So I think, and also biofuels and other green ways of burning things as green as they can be, right? An example is that like people today still ride on horses, even though cars exist. So I think it's probably going to become like maybe Ferrari will have to become a more niche company that sells things that maybe aren't even road legal, track only cars that you drive for enjoyment. The other end of the spectrum would be, them selling an SUV, an electric SUV, just to capture the market. But it's sort of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, right? Porsche was dying as a company until they created their SUV, which subsidized their 911 and their sports cars. So I think that's sort of where they have to go in order to continue thriving as a business.
Yeah, you don't buy an expensive watch, right? Because it's precise, right? You don't judge watches because they are precise, flawless precision. You buy a Patek Philippe or the Marpiguet because of the craftsmanship. There's a mechanical romance, right? So you are in love with the mechanics. You're in love with of course, the shape, the style. You need to love what you see, of course, but you need to know that months were spent crafting that single unique timepiece. That's the only reason. Otherwise, an Apple Watch will be more valuable, right? Because it's way more precise. It has a mathematical inherent precision. Same thing with a Ferrari and Lamborghini. You don't buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini because one is faster than the other. You don't even care, right? Yes, they need to be fast, but you're not going to buy a Lamborghini if you're a Ferrari owner and passionate fan just because Lamborghini is 5 or 10 miles per hour faster. You don't care. Now we are assisting to a great equalization, right? So the great equalizer is the battery. So every vehicle is basically the same. You just change the shape of the interior, of the exterior. Obviously, you may fall in love with a nice line and a sexy car. But guess what? Speed very similar. Engine absent. Only a blender attached to a battery. That's the car market today. Ferrari is trying to sell this car at a premium. I'm not saying it's impossible. Good luck to them, but I think this was an unnecessary risk to take today. They could have waited a few years, but yeah, AJ is right. So cars are planned with 5-7 years earlier, and you can tell by the technology that usually car makers put in their cars, and usually old. It smells old. It feels old, and very, very out of fashion. And let's see what happens. Good luck to Ferrari.
Good luck to Ferrari.